the Bronx Bull, the Raging Bull. Let's hear for the great Jake LaMotta, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm the best. I can take him more than anybody.
You're dead, you're married. Leave the young girls for me.
There's no way I'm going down. I don't go down for nobody.
What is it with him? Why does he have to make it so hard on himself?
If you beat Trigger Ready, you'll get a shot at the title. You feel that way?
There's no one else around who wants to fight me. They're all afraid.
There's a lot of bad things, Joey. Maybe it's coming back to me.
We shot all the fight scenes first in Los Angeles. And the fight scenes were scheduled for 5 weeks. But in doing them shot by shot, the way I envisioned it, it was a laborious process, which went over twice the length in shooting. So I think it was about 10 weeks.
We ran over a little bit, but the work seemed to be going very well. And the material that we saw every night, the dailies from the day before, were quite good. So we just kept going along, and we never really had any great problems with the studio because I think they were so busy with Heaven's Gate at the time that they kind of left us alone.
And then it took about another 10 weeks shooting in New York and Los Angeles for the dramatic scenes in the picture.
People seem to think for some reason that Robert and I just spouted off at the mouth anytime we wanted to. It's not so. We improvised in rehearsals and transcribed everything, and that was the Bible, and Marty wouldn't let you change that unless something really popped up that was terrific, you know.
Harder, harder, harder.
That's hard. What the fuck? What do you want?
Take it off.
And they shot and shot and shot, and it kept getting better and better. And then Marty decided to put the prop man outside in the tenement alley.
What's the matter with you up there, you animals? What? Son of a bitch is calling me an animal. Hey, you!
Marty knew that this guy had the kind of personality where he could motivate Bob and get Bob mad, so he just stuck him down in the alley.
Larry! Crazy animal! Who's an animal? Your mother's an animal, you son of a bitch! Oh.
A great deal of the ambience in Raging Bull comes through the windows because Marty, when he was growing up in the tenement buildings, you would hear other people playing music, you would hear families arguing, you would smell cooking, and so he wanted that to be in the movie.
You're in your fucking ass. You tell you. Go out.
What's the matter with you, huh?
What's the fuck matter with you?
At one point, though, I think it was one of the few formal questions I ever recall De Niro asking me about anything, really. He asked me, Jake LaMotta is a character. If he were an animal, what would he be in your mind? And I said, I guess a leopard. Maybe. He says, that's funny. He says, I see more as a crab. I said, okay. He sees it as a crab. I'm watching what he does. I like it. I'm not going to argue with him it's a leopard.
We come together, we want to do things, but he'll do it for his reason, I'll do it for mine.
And as any actor will tell you who's worked with him, he will try anything with you. You know, you have come up with an idea, give him a choice, he'll try it. So he's very open to that stuff.
Vicky, this is my brother, Jake. He's gonna be the next champ.
How you doing?
The first meeting was taken from On the Waterfront, Eva Marie Saint and Marlon Brando. And none of those lines were in a script, and we had no idea what we were going to say. And it went up, and I said, "Nice car." And it became like one of these famous lines that people were like, "Say it again, Cathy, say it again." I was like, "Yeah, nice car." But I don't know, it just turned into a scene. It wasn't even supposed to be anything there, and it turned into like this lovely little scene.
You want to go for a ride?
All right. Gotta give me a few minutes. I have to change, okay? Oh, man, the hair would take forever. And Jean Burt Riley, God bless her, she passed away before the movie came out. She was a hairdresser who worked on Marilyn Monroe. So I used to love to go see Jean because I would get all the great stories. But she used to set my hair with corn syrup at the ends, and it would stay forever. The only problem was that the bees in the summer used to circle my head. So the pool scene, that hairdo was like amazing. The only thing was she used to send me home with pin curls in my hair. I think it was just to make sure I wouldn't go out that night, though, if you ask me.
Cathy Moriarty, Vicky, is sort of associated with water in a curious way. You first see her with water, and she kicks in slow motion. She kicks the water like that with her feet. And then later on, there's a horribly sad scene where he's standing in the bathhouse of that pool, and it's raining again, and it's all with water. And in some curious way, she's associated with water, as if she can, you never can quite get your hands on her. She flows away.
I know she's doing something. I just want to catch her once. Just once.
And the religious iconography, no doubt, was used to help frame shots. I don't know quite what you can say about that religious iconography, which certainly is everywhere in the movie, except that it meant something to Marty as far as iconography, and it seems utterly appropriate for the movie, that religiosity that is in their heads is all around them in their lives.
Marty and Bob had both studied Jake LaMotta's own home movies. He had a 16-millimeter camera, and he had shot all his home movies in color. And Marty has always said that those home movies are actually a better picture of Jake's life than Raging Bull is. He said that you could see the decay of the family in the faces, the smiling faces in all those home movies. So, wanting to show a passage of time very quickly, Marty decided to imitate those home movies as much as he could. He tried as hard as he could to make them look almost exactly like Jake's.
I started shooting them, the home movies, and I couldn't frame them badly enough. All my instincts led me to frame them rather artily, here and there, which of course is utterly wrong. So I told that to Marty. I said, Marty, I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. I can't get it right. Why don't you do it? So he said, okay, I'll do it. And he started doing it. And he couldn't do it either. He had the instincts of framing, of how you do it, and he couldn't make them look amateur enough. He couldn't. So we finally got the Teamsters to come, and we would give them the camera and say, here, you go shoot this. And so the various Teamsters would shoot those, and they, being utterly amateurs, got it just right, that it looked like amateur footage.
Then Marty wanted to make sure it looked battered and as if it had been around in somebody's closet for a while. So then we started desaturating the color so it would be as if it had faded over the years, and cut in flash frames and things that we took from other footage so that it looked like it had broken and been spliced and beaten up a bit. And then the horrible moment for the negative cutter, who prides herself on never making a scratch on your negative, was that Marty went into her cutting room and actually scratched the negative so that it would look as if somebody had threaded it up wrong one day and damaged it. She was just horrified. But it gave the look that he wanted. And we printed all the rest of the movie on black and white stock, and then we printed the color sequences on color, and they had to be hand assembled in the lab, actually hot spliced together, and we had mixed the sound so that would work. And when I was going around checking theaters in the New York area to see how the film was being projected, was it being shown properly at the right luminance, and was the sound good, I went into a projection booth to introduce myself to the projectionist, and he was carefully spooling the home movie sequence onto the floor. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, the lab made a mistake. They cut some other movie into this, and so I'm taking it out. I'm just trying to help you out." So I've always said the projectionist is the final editor, and in that case it was certainly true.
It's all calm down. All right, fine, relax. Come on, we're friends a long
Just
time.
upset. You lost my brother's wife.
Hey, Joey, there's nothing going on over
I'm
here.
sorry, I really am. We're friends. We can straighten this.
I don't know if I would have done the shot if it was a different actor, because I trusted Joe, and I trusted his instincts and my instincts. Joe and I talked about it. We sort of like walked through it very unceremoniously to get a little bit of a timing down. The funny part of the story is that all the extras in the room, nobody knew what was going to happen. But the first take, the place went crazy. The people went nuts. They were screaming. The table turned over by itself, and it just happened. But it was an interesting shot to do.
It was between me and Salvi. If it had anything to do with you and Vicky, I would have told you about it.
That's not what I heard, Joe.
What do you mean that's not what you heard?
That's not what I heard.
What'd you hear?
I heard some things.
And that scene was written in the aisle. And I think it's the longest scene in the script. It was 7 pages. And the paranoia was worked out very carefully. And we just felt really good about it. And I don't think we ever touched the scene. I don't think there's hardly anything improvised. I don't think there's hardly any improv in there. Very, very little. Maybe a few words here and there. But it was the escalation of his distrust and paranoia of his brother. The escalation is what I was getting at.
I think it was a brilliant idea of Paul Schrader's to narrow the structure down and make it rest heavily on the two brothers, because you could show Jake's paranoia and his jealousy very easily that way.
I'm your brother. You're supposed to believe me. Don't you trust me?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? That's nice.
I don't trust you when it comes to her. I don't trust nobody.
And the closeness of their relationship, that they depended so heavily on each other, and then to see that begin to fray and to have him turn even on someone who was maybe the closest to him in his whole life, showed you how far gone he was.
There was just no two ways around it. He was headed towards full destruction. And that's the scene. It's the center of the movie. That's it.
She really did some job on you, know?
It was all very pretty much planned. And then, of course, he finally said,
"You fucked my wife."
It was just such a strange thing to me that a brother would ask another brother that question. I couldn't imagine one brother having sex with another brother's wife. Maybe it's because of where I came from in my neighborhood. And Robert knew the kind of person I was, so he kept going after me and going after me. And I think at one point he wanted to get another reaction out of me.
He did a take off camera, and he told Pesci off camera, he said, "You fuck your mother." And so that's the one we used. You'll see Joe's surprise.
"You fucked my wife."
What?
Which is wonderful. That's why I learned about acting. I watch these guys.
How come you didn't tell me about the coke?
Tell you what about it?
You know.
The fact that Cathy was not like a seasoned actor or anything was almost better in some ways.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, she just had good instincts.
Why didn't you tell me, huh? Did you fuck my brother? Huh?
Get off me,
you
fat pig!
Did you? Huh?
No! That was a really hard day. It was just very difficult because Bobby was so pent up, and it was a really hard scene for him. It's more physical for me because it was all Jake and just his anger and frustration.
I just want to ask you one thing. Why did you fuck Joey?
Get away!
Open the door.
No. It was a little on the frightening side, wasn't it? That door came down. We only had they would tell me right beforehand. See, I always make a joke out of that. Cathy, we only have 6 doors, so you'll only have to do this 6 times. It's like, oh, how lucky for me.
Why'd you do it, huh? Why'd you do it?
I didn't do it!
Why'd you do it? Why'd you do it?
And my part was just more physical and just trying to get through it and be supportive for him, knowing that Jake was just exploding, and just what I would have to respond to him to make him even madder and madder and madder and madder and to keep it going.
You sucked his cock.
Yeah, I sucked his cock and everybody else on the fucking street, too. What do you want? You're nothing but a fat pig, selfish fool.
And as he then walks down the street to attack his brother, You see her following him and hitting him, and then he hits her back. But she's always taking Jake on in her own way.
Hey, look, I'm a bum without you and the kids. Don't go.
What was interesting about Vicky, and particularly with Cathy Moriarty, was that the silence was deafening. She said everything just by her presence. And so, whether it's physical abuse or other kinds of abuse, I don't know. Sometimes people gravitate back into that relationship. Something that can't be put into words, that we felt, at least on that level, with that kind of the world we were depicting, And also, it's a world that they're in. They know damn well what they're into, and they know who they are, I think.
I think that she really did love him very, very much. And she understood him for some reason. She understood. I think she understood that it really just wasn't his fault, or she couldn't blame him for it all the time.
I mean, it's an interesting thing about a fighter. I mean, his job is to go in the ring and hit people and be hit. That's his drive. That's what he does. When he comes out of the ring, he's expected to act like a courtly gentleman. I don't know.
No, I'm no Olivier, but if he fought Sugar Ray, he would say that the thing ain't the ring, it's the play.
I've known Bob now since we made our first movie together in 1972, since the gang that couldn't shoot straight. So we've known each other for, 30 some odd years. And the only time I ever had an argument with Bob in all these years was about gaining the weight. What happened was, he said to me that I think the best way to do this for me to gain the weight is to shut down production, for me to go off and gain 50, 60 pounds, and be the Jake LaMotta that you will see as a different character, basically, because of the weight and the look of his face and the gait and everything else. And we had an argument about it, and I said, we can make prosthetics for you, we can build up your neck and all that, and puff up your face and all. And he said, you don't understand. I have to become that Jake LaMotta character. I have to become that, and the only way I could do that is to gain the weight. And I kept saying it's not necessary and it's not good for your health, and I don't know how I'm going to shut down the movie for 3 months while you do this. He said, I got to do it.
He was clear as to what he wanted to do, and he wanted to go all the way with his characterization of Jake.
He was starting to gain the weight previous. He'd always say, want to have a milkshake with me? But he needed to gain weight. I didn't, so that wasn't working out well, because I was starting to gain weight then, so I skipped the milkshake and the cheesecake. But there was concern for his health and stuff, but he knew what he was doing.
Robert did it because he really wanted to feel what Jake LaMotta felt, because Jake LaMotta had always had a hard time making the weight. That's all he talked about, was the weight, making the weight, making the weight. And he made such a big issue out of it, talking to Robert all the time, that Robert wanted to feel that sensation of blowing up like that. And he didn't do it to grandstand or to get an Oscar, and I felt so bad for him, because every asshole in the world in Hollywood says that kind of thing, and it's not true.
And so there was a hiatus. Bob gained a little weight, and I came back through L.A., and we shot the scene at the pool, where he announces with his children and his wife that he's not going to fight anymore.
It's over for me. Boxing's over for me. I'm through.
And then ultimately, around Christmas time, '79, we shot the last 7 or 8 days, and Bob was at full weight.
I was never no good at it.
I hadn't heard from him for weeks and weeks and weeks, and one day somebody walked into my office, and I literally didn't recognize him, and he had this big smile on his face, and there was the Jake LaMotta that he wanted to become.
Apparently, he ended up going to Italy and just stuffing himself full of pasta, and I mean, it was quite a shock. I mean, it was a shock to us, just as it's a shock to the audience when they see it and they realize that it is not padding, it's not anything. He's just fat, and there is no trickery involved,
We shot quicker at that point, too, because the weight was, you could hear it in his breathing.
Hey, Jake,
was taking its toll, and we all agreed, let's get it over with and start losing that weight, you know.
From the weight that I was, I think I was 150 or 52. I went to 210, 212.
The main piece of business that De Niro pulled together as a character, the main way of expressing himself is in the jail cell, punching the wall a certain way, and then hitting his head against the wall. That's it. That's the whole movie, and that's the character. When I saw him do that, he said, Jake LaMotta did this in the hotel room. He showed Bob what happened to him in the cell, and he just saw that. I saw this motion, and I saw he's got it. I mean, that's what it is. That's what the film's about.
One thing I only remember about the jail scene is making the walls sort of soft with a kind of a rubber. So when I bang my head, I'm not, you know. That's the one thing that I remember.
They were slightly padded, but it was a very, very hard rubber cushion that was painted and treated to look like the walls. I mean, it's real simple. He punched very hard, and it must have hurt like hell. And we did very exact, precise shots because, of course, there's no light in the cell, and there's only a few shafts of light that come through. And so we had to be very specific about where he could be and where he would get some light and where he would not get some light. And sometimes not being lit is just as important as being lit, you know? I mean, obviously, this is a scene about the darkness in this man's head or soul or whatever you want to say. So utter darkness and a few shafts of light is just appropriate.
Why are you doing? Why? You're so stupid. You're so stupid. So fucking stupid. So stupid.
It was a scene that when we were shooting it, and I watched them shoot it, I had no idea to the extent to which it would be so moving in the film. And interesting enough, one of the few comments we had from UA at the time was to cut it. But that's not unusual. You get that all the time.
Oh. Hey, what are you doing? Joey.
The relationship on the end of the movie between Bob and I came out that way because Marty didn't let us see each other for a while before we shot the scene. He wouldn't let us talk about it or anything. And Robert and I were such good friends and close friends that it really hurt me to see him begging for forgiveness.
Yeah, break, come on. Kiss me, huh? Give me a kiss, come on.
Wait, let me call my wife and kids. Don't you want them to see the kids?
Oh, you're gonna forgive or forget?
And I remember before the scene, Robert told me that. He said, a lot of actors would love to be in that position and can't wait to cry. He said, fight it, which was really helpful.
That scene when Bob goes over and forces Joe to hug him and keeps hugging him is just a brilliant moment. And by the way, shot mostly from the back of De Niro's head because it just worked out that way when they were shooting, but you feel the emotion tremendously. Beautifully acted and very simple scene and crucial to the end of the movie.
You don't want to do this here. Come on. Let me call you. We'll get together in a couple of days.
You call me.
I will.
I forget.
Originally, Schrader had the idea that Jake would constantly comment on his younger life in older scenes in the nightclub, and he had written it that way. And we're supposed to continue on throughout the movie, intercutting him, old and fat, talking about himself.
We had a screening, and we all were very depressed. We didn't feel the film was really working. And I flew back to L.A., and the next morning I got a call from Marty and said, I think I solved it. Why don't you come back? And I flew back, and he had solved it, and then he made the film work by making some very, very specific changes.
When we saw the first rough cut, Marty and I, we just went and looked at it together, and we knew that we didn't need those flashbacks, that the story was so strong that we could just bookend the movie just with the two sequences of him rehearsing to go out on stage, and it would be fine. We didn't need the other scenes, so we just ripped them out, and it worked perfectly.
We had the speech he recited in the original script from Shakespeare. And so he took Michael Powell down to Hong Fat. Hong Fat is a great noodle restaurant down in Chinatown. And one night, myself and Bob De Niro. And this was during that period, too, where I still wasn't totally committed to it. This is Schrader's first rep. And He said, the ending's all wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the character reciting Shakespeare is just not right. And we thought about that.
A horse, my kingdom for a horse. I haven't had a winner in 6 months.
We talked, well, we better seriously consider On the Waterfront. We were discussing it, and it came up that it was more our iconography than, for better or for worse, not necessarily Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe and Ben Jonson. It just happens to be as more our iconography, being American, with our education and our background. This is where we come from. And so we surrendered to it and said, okay, let's do it.
Some people aren't that lucky. Like the one that Marlon Brando played in On the Waterfront.
My feeling was that it would have to be unemotional, as flat as possible. But as we started to do it, he said, can I try this and can I try that? And I think we did about 18 or 19 takes until he had worked his process all the way through as an actor. And this is one of the key things about making the pictures we made together, from Raging Bull to King of Comedy. You know, the way I worked with him, he would always tell me, listen, as long as we try things, but you're the guy in the final analysis. If you don't like it, it doesn't go in. That's the way it is. And he always kept his word that way, which made it very comfortable to work together.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie.
And of course, Marty is playing a stagehand who comes in and says,
How you doing, Jake? Everything all right?
Yeah.
Ready?
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Need anything?
Nah.
and the sort of tired, jaded way Marty does that, and the little feeling of him in that final scene is great.
A lot of people out there.
Yeah, it's crowded.
Before the film finished, one of the great mentors in my life, Haig Manoogian, was my professor at NYU, the Armenian American, died of a heart attack. And he was a tough teacher, and we didn't always agree on everything, and he was one of the co-producers of my first feature, too, Who's That Knocking?
He was wonderful. And Marty wanted to show Haig that I'm sorry. Just give me a minute, I'll be fine. I don't know. I didn't expect that to hit me like that. I think Marty wanted to show Haig that finally Marty felt he had made a film that justified everything that he had often argued about in this wonderful way with Haig. And so it was very upsetting to us when we've heard that Haig had died just as the film was being finished. And because of that, Marty decided to put the Bible verse at the end of the film and dedicate it to Haig. The loss was very big for both of us.
Through making the film, through Bob, who saw something through Jake, through this character, the real Jake, became a character through Bob and Paul and Martic and myself and everybody. Through that journey, I was able to see something that I hadn't seen in myself, really. It also meant Haig, too, because he was able to make me see, in a sense, to be able to actually put what was in here and here onto film. That was the work I was doing. It was on film. Can't help it. That's all it was. You know, it was not canvas. It was not a play. It was not a book. I don't know. It was on film. And so it was a personal thing, purely personal. I did not mean it to mean Jake LaMotta as a character. It was more about Haig, and it was more about the process of what making the film about this quote-unquote Jake LaMotta, not the real Jake, but the Jake that somehow comes out of the film and is perceived differently by different people over the years. You make up who Jake is in the movie. I don't know, you know? And so that's what it meant. I didn't think anybody was really going to see the picture.
Cheers. They still ring in my ears, and for years they remain in my thoughts. Because one night, I took off my robe, and what I do? I forgot to wear shorts. I recall every fall, every hook, every jab. As you know, my life wasn't drab. Though I'd rather hear you cheer when I delve into Shakespeare. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. I haven't had a winner in 6 months. And though I'm no Olivier, I would much rather... And though I'm no Olivier, If he fought Sugar Ray, he would say that the thing ain't the ring, it's the play. So give me a stage where there's bullhead and rage, and though I can fight, I'd much rather recite. That's entertainment.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the feature attraction.
Mamada is losing the title that he won from the gallant Marcel Cerdan. After the tragic plane crash that took Cerdan's life, Laurent Chausseel vowed to take the title back to France. Mamada is taking terrible punishment on the ropes as Chausseel bangs him with left and right to the head.
What do you think you're doing out there? What are you doing out there?
Come on, Jake, I got some money on you. Another right to the jaw, and Lamar turns around. He's been playing possum. He's got Chausseel hurt. He rips the right hand of the body, two left hooks to the jaw, another left and a right to the head. Chausseel is flailing around the ring. And he wobbles into the rope and goes down. Chausseel is down, and the referee Lou Handler comes over and starts the count. He's trying to get up. He'll never make it. 10. It is all over. He is knocked out. And Jake LaMotta, with 13 seconds left to go in the final round, has made one of the most remarkable comebacks in all boxing history.
Go get him, champ.